So, some of the challenges I feel like I experienced, um, especially when it has something to do with our age difference, was, for starters, you came in with a lot of first. It was your first, time living on your own.
Yeah.
It was like your first time being, in the role of a husband and a father. It was your
Yeah.
first time being, um, doing a lot of different things. Being a leader, of a household, being a head
Yeah.
of a household.
Definitely.
So I dealt with a lot of challenges with that.
Yeah.
Just allowing you to take the lead, but you not having experiences. You depended on me a lot. You were codependent,
Yeah.
and that brought some challenges, as well as like financially there were some challenges. Um, I dealt with some challenges with just with your inexperiences. You being younger than me, a little bit more immature. Because you are a comedian by nature, you like to play a lot, like to laugh a lot. That was a little challenging for me because I'm more of the serious type. You're more of the jokey type, but it didn't. I don't feel like it brought like issues or challenges. It was challenging for me at some time, but it also brought balance too. So I
Yeah.
think that worked for us in some ways.
And I think that whole scenario really, when we look back at it, we look at like challenges, right? There were some challenges, but then there were actually some just. It wasn't that it was challenging; it was just different, And so when it came down to, for example, the comedic piece, me just being jokey a lot, it was like me just bringing that humor piece to the table, and bringing a lot of it, and I mean, because the kids was into it, and then at times you was into it, and things like that. However, the problem with me a lot of times is just not knowing how to turn it off, saying sometimes. So that's where you came in, and I wasn't used to that, But I was like, yo, but. Yeah, definitely one of the challenges I know for sure would definitely have been like the financial piece, because I was always under the impression, like a lot of the old heads used to do, hey, as long as I'm going to work, I'm going ahead and I'm bringing home the money, bam, give it over to you. You do whatever it is need to be done, make sure the bills, this, that, and the other is paid, and that wasn't how you were wired, So it was just like, oh, okay. Okay, so it's more to this than I thought. Me being a leader, commanding a household for the first time, like I always tell anybody, there's a difference between being in the passenger seat and you watching how a driver drives the car versus when you get inside the car yourself and you start driving. You be like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, the brake got to go, the pedal got to go on this, and I got to go ahead and roll this one down. And I know this is when I turn the signal on, this, that, and the other. So it was definitely that, definitely new. Different from me being a father for the first time, being a husband for the first time, being a leader of the household for the first time, versus watching, whether I've seen it on TV or I've watching it in my own house or other men and women do it. So
Yeah, I get that. I do understand that it was a lot of first. I remember that time that I decided that I wanted to just like, okay, you're going to completely lead this thing. I'm not going to be the one leading it. And you remember that time when we ended up, when I took that hands off
hands off,
approach,
yeah,
and you were the one fully driving it, we ended up homeless as a result of that.
did, and
That was very scary.
it was, and the thing is too, I know any real husband will say this. He never likes to see his wife distressed, and so for me, I didn't like seeing that distress on you because I was noticing that it was so much so to a point to where it was times that me and you couldn't even come together sexually. You know what I'm saying? We couldn't even be intimate with each other because you was caring so much. Exhaustion was just on you, period, having to work to take care of this and having to take care of that. And all I'm doing, and it happened to be a mom at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And my only thing that I was doing was I was making sure I was going to work, and I was coming home. But that was pretty much just it. So, I'm like, you know what, man, I'm going to take the load off of her. And it was like, wait a minute. I probably didn't count the cost here, and then and then ended up, dropping the ball and dropping us as a family together. But it was a learning experience. I was grateful we did go through that because it was a learning experience, a real eye opener for me to realize, okay, this is what you need to do, this is what works, and this is not, this doesn't. So, well, being inside of a society, I know that God knew that being inside of a society today that is so coming away from marriage and definitely is just have a whole different viewpoint on what love is and what they think love is, and that's both in the church as well as in society and the culture as a whole. He knew that he was going to need people that were going to stand up and be like, yo, no, this is still right, this still works. And so for me, I definitely believe that growing up, what I saw, you know, of a lot of different marriages, from adultery and divorce and just a lot of people who were married but not functioning together. They weren't fruitful, but they were functioning.
Yeah.
I didn't want any of that. So in my seeking of that, I definitely believe what the Lord was just really doing in our marriage is teaching us what true love is, first of all, and then doing marriage from a kingdom standpoint versus doing it from a culture standpoint. So just definitely just doing away with a lot of the myths, a lot of the ideologies and things like that that has been there for so long that we've took to be gospel, and he's like, no, that's not me. You know, it's just really wanting to show what love is at its core. You know, just in purity and in love. And he know I needed it. He know I wanted that. You know, so when I was searching for my wife and in prayer, didn't know I was gonna have you. You know, specifically being my wife. You know, but and that's the beauty of it all. So.
Yeah, for me, I believe the reason why we became a couple too was because, I mean, for me, I feel like, you know what, we're like two misfits that fit together.
Bam,
you know what I mean?
like a glove.
No, seriously, like we dealt with some of the same similar things. Like we dealt with rejection. Yeah. We dealt with a lot of like, you know, trauma from the past, and a lot of our upbringing was very, very unique and very different, but very similar. Like I do believe like we're the Josephs of our family, right? And I feel like God brought us together because we'll be most effective together.
Exactly.
And I just feel like, you know, for example, a lot of my strengths are your weaknesses. And a lot of your weaknesses are my strengths. And I feel like that's the reason why God, you know, brought us together and we became a couple so that we could be more effective. I do believe that we're generational curse breakers.
Yes.
I believe that we're going to break curses in our bloodline, on both sides. I feel like God brought us together so that we can be trailblazers for our family bloodlines, and I think that we'll have a bigger impact together. I believe that's the reason why God brought us together as a couple. How did I know that you was meant for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be honest. Like at first, it wasn't love at first sight.
Definitely not.
It wasn't love at first sight. I was excited when you proposed to me, but I was very nervous at the same time. I mean, it was many different things.
Yeah.
I mean, I can clearly see that, you know, because of your age difference, our age difference, I mean, you were really not as prepared to be married. And so I was questioning God about it, like, okay, are you sure? Is this really the one? You're gonna have to help me out with this. But God definitely, when I say affirmed and reaffirmed us, I mean, he kept sending signs. Like, for example, the different couples that we were meeting, like, we met like 2 or 3 couples where the wife was older than the husband. I didn't meet anyone like that before. It was never like that. We were meeting people that our situations were very similar. I had prayed and asked God to, you know, confirm our marriage. And there were certain things about you that he reminded me of that he had told me would be my husband would have. For example, you were into music. My husband, he told me prior to meeting you that my husband would be into music and a musician of some sort. I was always told that I was going to be a first lady, which I don't even like that term, but that I was going to be marrying a pastor. Well, you were not a pastor, but you were a budding pastor. You were on your way to becoming a pastor. So those key things stuck out to me. Right. So that was some of the things that God did to affirm and confirm that you were meant for me. But it was a knowing. I had a very strong amount of peace about us, even though things were seemingly not adding up like naturally. Spiritually, it just felt perfect and it felt right, and I couldn't explain it, but I just knew.
So you never like felt like confused when it came down to me at all. Like it wasn't like a sense of confusion there at all.
The only time that it got confusing was when I was trying to bring my logic into it.
Gotcha.
When I was trying to make it make sense. Oh God, no, you wouldn't bring somebody 10 years younger than me because I'm mature. So right. I would need someone on my same level, mature-wise, age-wise. But there was just. God would speak to me. He would tell me he would bring up even scriptures to me like, yeah, the scripture that I would always bring up to you. What's that scripture about?
The Hosea scripture.
No. The one that talks about that the Lord would use the foolish things of the world
to confound the
to
wise.
confound the wise.
Yeah.
He has to do that for me in our relationship, because I was trying to make it make sense.
Right.
Like, this don't go with that. He's not prepared to be married right now. He's inexperienced, but you're saying that we are meant to be together. We're supposed to be together. But over time, now we are here 8 years later, and he has over and over again affirmed and confirmed us. So that's how I know.
Definitely. And I know for me, it was definitely more of a situation where, first of all, I went into prayer for the first time for my wife, before I knew that you even existed, September 7th, 2013. And at the time, I was just coming out of a soul tie. A soul tie I've been in for 2 years. And it felt weird going to God, asking him, yo, Lord, Lord, I'm asking that you reveal to me who my wife is, because I thought I had finally reached a place where I was able to put the face with the body, but the circumstances clearly was just not there. Because one thing I've learned is when God really truly sends you somebody, you never have to beg somebody to love you, And what was interesting was when you came along, it was very like a natural flow. It was like the things that I cared about, you naturally cared about them. It was the things everything that was concerning me, it was naturally there. I always wanted to go down to the lake, for example, at Lakeshore Drive. That was a place that you love to go there faithfully, So all of those things it was natural. It wasn't something I really had to like ask about, and it was nerve-wracking for me as well, because I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to fail at this, I really don't, but I really, really feel something very special about you. And it wasn't it was never sexual. That was the thing that I really knew was very unique about our situation. It was never sexual. The idea of sex when it came down to you wasn't something that came up on my mind until I got closer to you. I mean, then those feelings just naturally would show up. But outside of that, it wasn't a situation where I'm like, man, I'm gonna smash this. We're gonna, The other thing was, for me, the fact that there are people who I feel like that are in your life that are actually graced to walk with you. So in your case, looking at the baggage that I carried that I had pretty much baggaged up or buried underneath or what have you, prior to your arrival, when them things started to come out, it was almost like once they saw you, it was like putting a boiling of water on, and everything was like boiling and stuff like that, but there was no top on it, so whatever was in there was like jumping out. It was coming out. And so with you, you had such a grace to be able to still choose to walk with me. You chose to walk with me.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember the first argument we had.
Yeah.
The first argument we had was like a red flag right there.
Definitely. So for people, what happened? We had an argument regarding. It was a picture that she had sent me, and on the picture it said something along the lines of it had something to do with love. And my whole thing was, we was having a conversation in regards to that particular picture. And it turned into an argument because she said something along the lines of, that when I came into it wasn't until I came into your life that your life became better. And so I took that offensively, because what triggered for me was, in other words, you're basically saying my life was trash before you came along, and my life was popping before you came along. It was just that you and I have a very strong, unique friendship. And oh my gosh, y'all, I went off. I lost it. And
I think it was really like more of it hit a nerve from something from previous, like a previous issue from some time ago. Somebody else may have made you feel that way, and that statement triggered it. Because I was only coming from, that song from, Beyonce, "Let me upgrade."
Right.
And
which is true, because
you want somebody to come into your life and
definitely.
upgrade your life, and vice versa.
Definitely.
So if I didn't, upgrade your life, then that would be a problem.
It would have. And
So,
and it's funny you mentioned like that trigger, because what it was is I spent a lot of my life where people always were telling me what I wasn't versus me what I was, and it was always kind of like, basically, if people would do things for me and then they'd throw it at me later, and so it was just like all of that being in the mix, and so I kind of always wanted to be independent with that. But the problem is not knowing or realizing when it's time to accept help, and realizing that not everybody who wants to help you wants to hurt you, and so, and I also feel like too, going through being in the friendship and the relationship that we were in together, dealing with a lot of that hurt. Well, that's just it. I didn't deal with it, a lot of it. At least I didn't deal with it healthily, and I didn't process it right.
Yeah,
and hurt people, end up hurting people. Yeah.
And
so.
it was like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, we had a few run-ins.
But for me, I saw something different. I saw the trauma. I saw that, but then I was like, wow, he tripping, but it's okay. I know that'll pass eventually, and I stayed in it, and here we are.
And I just love also the fact that, like I said, you were graced to walk. You chose to walk with me. You could have walked away anytime, but you chose to stick with me. You chose to love me through. You chose to love me without trying to change me. That's what I loved about the situation. And then the other dynamic of that situation too is when I looked at the kids. Like the kids, it wasn't a situation. It was like, man, forget this dude, bro. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't one of them situations. I'm not tripping. It wasn't none of that. It was a natural embrace from them, and that was nerving for me because I'm like, man, at first, but it was just such a natural. It's like we just all fit together. So. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out too that made me feel like I knew that we were meant to be was, for me during that time, I had lost the kid's father, and I had spent that period of time just working. I was a workaholic, and I wasn't dating, and then all of a sudden you came along, and I wasn't, looking for a husband per se at the time. I believed God would bring me a husband, but I wasn't looking, be expecting my husband to pop up at any given moment. I wasn't. And then you showed up in my life during this time. And for whatever reason, well, we know now what the reason is, but you came and you never left. You came, even though I tried to push you away so many times. I was trying to get rid of you. I tried so many times to get rid of you, and you have been like a constant. You never, and like you said, I could have left where you could have left. You had plenty of times to say, you know what, this is too hard for me.
Definitely.
This is too much for me. I'm out. But you stayed, and you bared down, and that's how I knew. I was like, yeah, guys, you must have purposely put him here. Because he won't leave.
Perseverance. Perseverance. The mentality was the biggest issue. If anything, it was the mentality more than anything. And here's the reason why I say that. So growing up, I grew up in a family where, we saw a lot of blended families. I actually come from, in my own immediate household, come from a blended family. But I had an uncle who would, when he would date, most times it will always be a blended family type of situation. And there's one particular relationship that he was in, things just really got out of hand, really, really bad. He would do everything he could to go ahead and love the kids and love the mom and just do everything within his part. But it was just a lot of dysfunction that you would see go on. So for me, I was just like, wow, okay, just with those experiences and what I was seeing just from that whole situation, I was like, yo, I vowed I never wanted to be with a woman with kids, because at the end of the day, one thing you had to respect was that woman is always going to go to bat for her kids, you know what I'm saying, even if the kids are wrong in the situation. So it's like, as the man, you're limited as to how much defense you were going to get. So I vowed I never wanted to do that whole situation. And I was always discouraged from doing it too as well. When I was in a previous situationship, I remember me and you had just started hanging out. We weren't even really seeing each other in a relationship just yet. And I remember one time that conversation had came up, and the girl I was involved with at the time was just like, she could tell that I was becoming really much more serious about you. And she was saying to me, she was like, well, she had asked me, why didn't I pursue you fully? And I told her, I was like, well, one of the things, I don't know if I'm really ready to go into that, because, she's got kids, and, I didn't want to I didn't want to take in all of that because those type of situations don't always work out well. And she said, you don't know what kind of value that you will bring into those kids' lives by you actually going into their lives and just loving on them and caring about them. You could be the one to actually turn it around. This is what she said, and it put something on my mind. I was still nervous about it, and and it's crazy because it wasn't like I had met the kids yet. By the time I had met all of them at this particular time. So, I mean, it was just like, and the vibe was there. It was a natural vibe. There was no kind of anything that was out in the ordinary.
Right.
So it was just like, So I just said, okay, well, let me go ahead and try this. And I just went ahead and with it and tried it. I think the only time that there was ever any kind of resistance was my boys was cool. My girls on the other hand, they was like, I don't know. My oldest daughter, she definitely had her challenges with it because, well, number one, we were 4 years apart from each other, so that's number one. And number two, based on what she had shared with me when we finally did sit down and have a conversation as to what was her struggle with it, it wasn't even really something that I did. It was because she was traumatized from a situation with a friend of hers whose mother was involved with a dude who was younger than her, and the brother wasn't serious about her at all. He was really playing her, just all kinds of crazy stuff. So she obviously felt some kind of way because she didn't want her mother to be going through the same thing. And then my youngest baby, it was a little different because in her case, lost her father, never met him. And so it had been for all of her life, because she was like, 10 when I came into the picture. So for the first 10 years of her life, it had just been you, her brothers, her sister, and that was it. You know what I'm saying? So it was just like that place was like, okay, I know that I had a dad, there, and everybody speaks very well of him. We're going to leave that like that is. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, and so then when I came along, it was more like, okay, brother, I think you in the wrong spot. This ain't going to work here, So, I mean, but over time, what ended up happening when she saw just how genuine my heart was, and I think what really helped the kids was realizing that I was coming in to represent love and represent fatherhood versus trying to replace their father, what I'm saying, in that arena, but rather be a father, to them. And so that's really what really separated that situation. So it helped me. It brought a lot of peace because I was getting a lot of heat from other people when they found out. They was like, "Yo, she got kids? Yo, get out early." I was like, "Nah, but this is it here." So.
They thought I had 4 or 5 different baby daddies.
All of that.
Yeah.
The questioning was just crazy. How old is she? How many kids does she got? How many baby daddies does she have? And I'm like, has this become the culture at this particular point where that is the line of questioning? These are the doodads to determine whether or not a relationship is worth exploring or not,
Right.
So.
And then I want to add to that too when we talk about like challenges with blended families. You didn't want to bring this up, but you don't have any children of your own. No biological children of your own.
I have forgot all about that, to be honest.
And when we met, I told you up front, hey, my tubes are tied.
Yes, you did.
And that's just what it is. My tubes are tied. But interesting, there were people that were speaking into our lives during that time, and they were saying that, oh, your wife may think that she may have complications about getting pregnant, but she may not. No, he didn't say you may not. She's going to get pregnant.
Yeah.
She's going to get pregnant.
We was told 3 different times throughout the entire time that we've been married thus far that you were going to get pregnant. So.
And we're still waiting. We're still waiting, but we still believe God that God is He's gonna do a miracle. He's going to bless us with children together. But I know I always look at you and I'm like, wow, like he became. Because we have 2 grandbabies.
We do.
Now
I'm the youngest granddaddy in the world. Hey.
2 granddad. So you became a granddad before you became a father.
Yeah.
And I always used to, be a little concerned about that with you. Like, oh my goodness, I wonder if he'll be discouraged or is he upset about that because we haven't been able to have children together yet. And
what's crazy? That Honestly, that never really ever came across my mind. Like it
I'm
was just
very
like
surprised at that.
it. Honestly, I'm surprised it didn't come across my mind. Well, I'm not really surprised, but I'm surprised it never came across my
Right,
mind. 'Cause
not
I'm
really
just like,
surprised
yeah,
because-
because I'm like, God said it was going to happen, so it's just like it will happen in His due time.
His timing is perfect.
But I mean, it was just like, cool. This is just practice until I've had all this practice I'll be able to set in. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, you have the latter part of their teenage into adult life.
Definitely.
And
definitely.
then now God's going to bless us with the whole thing from the beginning all the
Getting
way
all
to
the way
the
to
end.
this point, yeah. So it's cool.
So really not a challenge, but kind of challenge, when you see people that have gotten married around the same time we got married, and got 3 and 4 and kids now, and we're still waiting. But God's timing is perfect.
I
do
just
believe that.
call us the new Abraham and Sarah. You know what I mean? It's just like for real. That's how I look at
I
it.
don't want to wait until I'm 90 something years old. That's not, we don't speak that into existence.
Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Shy.
We just want to say thank you all for tuning in and being able to watch our dialogue that we had today. We're definitely going to have more content that's going to be shown on this channel. Definitely like and subscribe
Yes.
and reshare.
Please leave your comments below. We do read them. We do love them.
Definitely. And of course, pass it to any and everybody that you know.